Hi, everybody. My name is Melisa Prevost. I'm a senior admissions consultant with Stratus Consulting, and I am here today with Charles Bibilos, who is with GMAT Ninja and a great partner of ours in helping our clients understand testing in general, getting some support on testing. And so, Charles, I'm super excited to have you here with me today.
Oh, thank you so much, Melissa. Great to be here.
Yeah. So I'm hoping we can talk a little bit about some of the questions that I'm getting from clients around the GMAT as we know it and the GMAT Focus coming up. What, people are trying to make some decisions on what they're going to take coming up here for maybe round 3, early next year, deferred rounds. Could you break down for us what are the differences between the two tests?
Yeah, well, we're in this magnificent phase where the GRE is changing. We're filming this in fall 2023. GRE just changed. We'll get into that in a minute. GMAT is changing. The new GMAT Focus Edition is launching on November 7th, 2023. We have a funny little overlap period. Exactly. So about 2 weeks away as we film this. About 3 months from now, so about a 3-month overlap period where you can choose either the old classic GMAT or the GMAT Focus Edition. The old GMAT goes away. The last day to take it is January 31st, 2024. So if you're watching this pretty soon after we film this, you might have the option of which test to take. If you're doing this later, you just have this new GMAT, but you might be reading stuff, outdated things on the internet talking about what the old GMAT was. But there's a new GMAT with a new format. And in all honesty, what GMAC, the people that create the GMAT exam and the executive assessment, what they're out to do is they were trying to create an exam that really accomplishes 2 things. One is that it's more test taker friendly. So they shortened the test quite a bit. It went from 3 hours and 7 minutes. Now it's 2 hours and 15 minutes of total testing time, not including breaks. Fantastic. You can change some answers on the test now. They've made score reporting easier and less expensive. They give you better data after your exam. So a lot of it is test taker friendly features. We can talk more about those in a minute.
That's nice.
And the second thing is that they're responding to business schools' need to measure certain things. So in particular, what business schools are saying is we don't really care about grammar. We don't care about geometry. But what's going to happen, or what happens every day in the business world, is you're getting a ton of data thrown at you. So we want to make sure that we're testing applicants' data literacy. So when we give you a graph, a chart, a pile of data, a pile of information, can you sift through it and get to the things that are really important, get to those insights? So they've taken a lot of the existing question types from the old GMAT, repackaged them a little bit, emphasized some things more than others. And poof, we have this new thing called the GMAT Focus, meant to be better for business schools to evaluate you as an applicant, and also just kind of a better experience for you as a test taker.
That's fascinating. And it sounds like they've really put a lot of thought into some of the pain points of geometry. Who uses geometry on a regular basis? Right. I was even an engineer and I never used geometry, but that's okay. So you talked a little bit about the key differentiators, it sounds like, between maybe kind of old GMAT and GMAT Focus. What should people be thinking about if they're in the, that our 3-month window that we're looking at here, where they could consider taking either?
Yeah. So again, to be totally clear, I like, and I'm not, GMAC is not paying me to say this, I like a lot of the changes they've made. I really do think that overall it's a better experience for the test taker. It's a lot nicer to be there for, realize it's only a difference of, 52 minutes. It's nice. That 52 minutes is exhausting. You have short little sprints. You have 45 minutes of verbal, 45 minutes of quant, 45 minutes of something called data insights. That's a lot better for most people. So between 20 and 23 questions per section. It's shorter. You focus for a short, intense period of time. Great. Don't have to worry about grammar or geometry anymore. That's fantastic. So most of those changes are good. And you're going to, I think what we're hearing from students who are already taking both kinds of practice tests, they're saying, oh, the GMAT Focus is much nicer to take. It goes by faster. So I'd say that the 3 really big things to focus on specifically in terms of what that experience is and how they're different. Plenty of other minor things, but I think the 3 big ones is old GMAT has sentence correction. Most people study grammar to get better at that. And it has geometry. Those are going away. For most of you, that's going to be a really nice change. 2 fewer things to study that can be kind of time intensive and also not feel very relevant. Your business skills, your success in business really doesn't depend on your command of gerunds and participles. So that change mostly good for most people.
Dangling participles still from my GMAT over 20 years ago, I still look at a dangling participle and I'm like, I see it.
And for what it's worth, I love teaching sentence correction. It was always one of my favorite things. And most tutors I know feel the same way, but we also kind of understood that why is this getting in the way of people's business school goals? It always felt silly to us too, as did geometry. Second thing that's a really nice little change, but I think really matters for some test takers. Now you can go back and change 3 answers. So it's still an adaptive test. All 3 sections of the GMAT Focus are adaptive, just like the quant and verbal were adaptive on the old version of the GMAT. But now when you get to the end of the section, yes, you have to answer every question as you go, but you can go review anything you want to. You can flag things, look at them later, and you can change up to 3 answers. Is that a huge deal? Is that going to radically affect anybody's score? I don't think so, but it's really nice just to know in the back of your head, I'm struggling on this one. I'm going to let it go.
You can skip and come back.
Yeah, you can't skip. You still have to answer it, but you can guess. Okay. You can guess, flag, and at the end go, yeah, that number 8, that was getting me. And you look back on it later and maybe the light bulb goes on and maybe it doesn't. It's okay. But I think it helps you manage your time a little bit better, just knowing there's not the pressure of, I got to make a decision on this right now. It's like, no, you can be aware that you can come back to it later. Nice feeling. I like that. Oh, good.
Can I ask you a quick question on the flag?
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe you said this and I just missed it, but do you have to flag it as you're going through, or at the end, can you choose any 3 to go back to?
Yeah, you can go back to anything you want. You can you can review every question if you want to. You can only change 3 of them. The flagging just helps you know what you want to look at later.
Okay.
So you don't have to, but I think it's a nice feature, and GMAC designed it specifically with sort of the pressure of test taking in mind, where one of the things that really drives anxiety on the GMAT, and we're really passionate about this. That's why I have a couple of psychologists on staff to help people through the test anxiety. When you know that you have to make a decision on that question, you're never going to see it again on the old GMAT, boy, that amps up the pressure. And GMAC was specifically thinking, yeah, how do we remove a little bit of that pressure? And if we can say to test takers, hey, if you get stuck, let it go, guess, flag it, move on. You can always come back and change it. And you don't have to be perfect on this test. It's an adaptive test. It's trying to find the level of question at which you get about half right, half wrong. It should hurt. You should have questions that are hard for you. And that's great. Let them go. You don't have to get everything right. And GMAC's thinking and what they found in kind of their testing leading up to it was, yeah, it does reduce anxiety for people. And that's the hope. And if used the right way, I think it makes the test taking experience a little bit less painful.
Stressful, yeah.
Yeah, it reduces the stress. It's like, oh, this is one of the 3 that I might change later. All right, great. You manage your time better.
Yeah, you can move on. Yeah. And sorry, you're bringing up things that and I know the old test was adaptive. Sorry, it's not. Current GMAT is adaptive as well as focus. Could you talk a little bit about what adaptive means? I think this kind of trips people up sometimes. Maybe even when they're considering GMAT versus GRE, I get an easy question. Did that mean I did bad in the last one, or yeah? Yeah,
great question, Melissa. So there are different ways to construct adaptive tests. GRE is a little bit different than the GMAT. The way the GMAT works is it's question level adaptive. So every question you see, the difficulty level is going to be tailored based on your performance up to that point, based on everything you've done. Okay. So when you get to question number 10, it's based on what you've done on those first 9 questions on that section, for example. So a lot of mythology kind of springs up around that, where it's like, well, if I get a question wrong, now I'm going to see an easy one. Easy. It doesn't necessarily adapt that quickly.
Okay.
Because by the time you get a little bit deeper into the test, it's based on everything you've done. And the test is trying to find, roughly, this is a little bit crude, but the idea is that it's trying to find the level of question at which you get about roughly half right, half wrong. So it's gonna get painful quickly. That's what it's designed to do. And so perfectionists tend to struggle on question adaptive tests sometimes because you go, I got to get everything right. If you're used to kind of the American way of education where 90% is an A,
right.
We see students all the time, certainly in the US context, they've gotten 95% of the test questions they've ever answered in their life correct. And you get to the GMAT and it's like, hey, 60, 70%, and you might get a score that gets you in an Ivy League. Because the number of questions you get right isn't what determines your score. It's the difficulty level of the questions that you get right and wrong. So you want to be really careful. If you know how to do the question right, be careful, execute really well on the ones that are easy for you, let the harder ones go. And again, GMAT Focus, it's designed to make it a little easier for you to let them go because you can come back. So if something is hard for you, don't worry about what the test thinks it is. if you look at it and go, I don't know what to do here. I've got an idea. It's going to take me 5 minutes. Guess, mark it, move on. A little bit different on the GRE. It's section level adaptive. So you get one, for example, quant section. Then the test adapts. And if you did really well in the first section, your second section will be harder. If you do poorly on the first section, your second section will be easier. Again, that's GRE only. So it feels a little bit different in that sense. GRE, you can skip around as much as you want to, but same general idea that kind of the key to unlocking your best score, whatever that might mean, is execute really well on the easy ones for you. Be careful, read the question twice, check your work. Sounds like really silly stuff, but when we see people who are really, really talented, and Melisa, I'm sure you see plenty of them walking the door at Stratus and going, I swear I'm pretty good academically. My score is stuck not where I want it to be. I want to go to a really great school.
Right.
I'm sure you meet people like this all the time where the talent's there, the ability's there, their score is 50 points, 100 points lower than they should get.
Right. Hope for and have shown aptitude that it's not something that's unrealistic for them.
Yeah. Those are careless errors because adaptive tests disproportionately punish you for missing things you know how to get right. Miss all the hard ones you want, let the test beat you, but don't beat yourself. If you can do that, that's really all you need to get to your best score for you, given where your skills are. Obviously, you want to push that ceiling upward. You got to go learn some more stuff and practice more. But when somebody's performing far lower than their demonstrated aptitude in other ways on their GMAT homework, GRE homework, other areas of their life, it's carelessness. And that's what really matters about the adaptive testing. That's the upshot for test takers is execute really carefully, check your work. Don't beat yourself.
Thank you. I've kind of taken you back to GMAT overall, but I think to your point on being able to go back and know that you can relook at a question that you're uncertain of really will help from an anxiety perspective.
Yep. So that's one of the big changes on GMAT Focus. Number 3, the other really big one for test takers, old GMAT, got 3 more months of it as we film this. 2 sections in your composite score. You've got quant and verbal. Those 2 combined to give you your composite score on that scale of 200 to 800. New GMAT Focus, 3 sections that contribute to your composite, quant, verbal, and data insights. Now, none of the question types are new. There was a section called integrated reasoning on the old GMAT. It was a separate little 30 minutes, separate little score that wasn't very important in admissions. Business schools and GMAC decided these skills matter. Now we're going to integrate it into the exam. So they've reshuffled some of the question types. It can feel a little bit different, but they're all question types that existed on the old version of the GMAT. And now you have 3 different sections that contribute equally to your composite score, quant, verbal, and now the data insights. The nice thing about data insights is for most people, not a ton of studying that is additional. So basic quant, things that you're studying for the quant section anyway, you should know what mean and median are. You should have a command of basic algebra, percents, that kind of thing. That's all things you're studying for the quant section anyway. You're going to be doing some reading. You're going to see some graphs and charts. Can you organize an Excel table and draw insights from it? Can you look at a graph, maybe a bad graph, deliberately? They deliberately will give you graphs sometimes that kind of thing you see in the real world. We've all had people drop really bad data displays on our desks. Most of us probably created bad data displays. They're going to give you data displays of varying quality. Can you pull something out of it that makes sense? And that's it. There's not a lot you need to study for it, which I think is really nice. But not to say that it's easy, but it really is just that data literacy skills and not getting intimidated and not trying to boil the ocean and go, what can I understand from this, even when it's not presented wonderfully? Which,
to your point, is very true to life, right? That's something that you do have to do in just about every job that's out there.
Yep. Yeah. And I think most people, our students that have really started to dive into data insights already, and certainly for us as tutors going and doing every question that's been released, ahead of the GMAT Focus launch, is we've gone, what the bleep is this? This graph is horrible. Like, who would produce this? Like this feels unfair. And we've had students complain about some of them. We go, have you ever seen anything like this in real life? It's like, yeah, people do it all the time. There you go. And it's weird. It feels weird on a standardized test, but it also, I think, is pretty true to life. And once you kind of grasp that they're going to give you too much information and information displayed in ways that aren't ideal, once you sort of understand and you kind of gear your mindset towards that, The good thing is, again, you don't have to go memorizing a bunch of grammar rules or geometry formulas. So that's another nice change.
Sounds like you've been a prep for a case consulting,
Yeah.
a case consulting interview for consulting, right? And there you get
Yeah.
more data than you need. And how are you gonna? So,
Yep.
interesting.
And I suppose the fourth thing we haven't brought up yet is that the score scale is changing. And
That was going to be my next question.
And this is the thing that I think a lot of people are concerned about, and we want to be totally honest about it. So for test takers, I like a lot of what's changed. The score scale, old GMAT, 200, 800, new GMAT, 205 to 805. Okay, why? Well, it's just so that an admissions committee evaluating your application can tell which exam you took immediately. If it ends in 5, it was GMAT Focus. If it ends in 0, it was the old GMAT. Okay, great. Your scores are valid for 4 years. So the next several application cycles, 2023, 24, 25, 26, we're going to see a mix of people who've taken both versions of the GMAT. Really nice if people evaluating your application can tell which exam you took. Great. That's the reason for the 5. Otherwise, they look the same. Here's the thing. At the higher end of the score scale, it's harder to get a high score now. So a 700 on the old GMAT is equivalent in percentile, equivalent in difficulty to a 645 or a 655 on the GMAT Focus.
That feels really different.
Yeah. And the question, and I think we're all trying to answer it, and love to hear your take on it too, Melisa.
Yeah.
What GMAC is telling schools to do is look at the percentiles. There's concordance tables where you can translate one score to the other. Those are publicly available online. You can go on MBA.com. You can find those. GMAC's been totally transparent about it. And they're educating business schools. And remember, business schools helped contribute to the design of the GMAT Focus. So they're telling schools,
important to remember,
look at percentiles so that you're comparing these fairly. My worry is that culturally, we anchor to this 700 number, and we have for generations. It's SAT was on 200, 800 scale for years and years, or the sections were. GRE used to be, GMAT has been, even the LSAT is kind of it translates pretty nicely to 200, 800, means something to us culturally. 700 is this number we've anchored to for generations of business school applicants. And I worry when we throw all this information that we throw at admissions officers, all these things that are in your application, and you have 2 different scores on 2 different scales, I'm a little bit concerned that there's still this idea in their head that, 700 is a really key threshold. And now it's a lot harder to get to that threshold.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did not know that they were adding, I didn't realize the 5 at the end. That helps a lot. It's interesting. Such a small thing can make such a big impact because it's going to be completely clear when they're looking at the score, which one they're looking at. And I think a little bit will depend on the volume of what the balance of the class is looking like, as far as how many people are taking which test. If people are, we work with a lot of people that take the test, right? And it's something, actually, if I'm talking to seniors in college, I say, take the test now. You're used to studying, right? It's good for 5 years. So presumably, to your point, for the next 5 years, they're going to be doing this kind of calculation this first year. It'll be interesting to see. I think if schools might fall back on, again, this is just an opinion, might fall back on how important is this piece of data for this applicant, right? If it is crucial, like I really need to understand that this candidate has the quantitative skills that we think are important to be successful in our classroom, and they really like the candidate, they will go and kind of understand from a percentage standpoint to help kind of win the case for that candidate. If there are, it might be a harder sell to have this test score be kind of that shining light in an overall portfolio for an applicant. I don't know. That's a quick read on maybe how it might be looked at.
And it'll be fascinating to see. It's one of those things where, we know that admissions committees have been and will continue to say the right thing, that they're going to be really, really careful. And I believe,
of course, and
all
of
the
course
people
they will be. Yeah.
So none of this is cynical. Like, of course, they're going to do the best to be really careful. It's just, I think we react as humans. We see numbers, and when they mean something to us, we react.
Right.
And it'll be interesting to kind of read the tea leaves over the next couple of admission cycles and go, well, hey, we're having these candidates that took the old GMAT and we're right around to 700 and they're still being successful. And our candidates right around to 645, 655 on the new GMAT, they're not being as successful, or they are, whatever the data source
Right. But it's going to take
us.
a couple of years to see people come through and
Yep.
to get that data. Yeah, for
Yep.
sure.
And maybe the bottom line, I think for anybody watching this in this funny 3 months where you can choose which test to take, yeah, if you really have no reason to choose one over the other in terms of your timeline or which one you're more comfortable with, yeah, at the margin, I'd probably be a little bit more comfortable with the old GMAT score just because we know how the scale operates in terms of admissions. But I wouldn't stress about it too much. If you're going, man, avoiding grammar and geometry sounds delightful, and I like reading bad graphs, GMAT Focus, don't even think twice about it.
And an hour less of testing, right? Test exhaustion is a thing. And if that kind of duration of sitting is something that gives you anxiety at all, that's probably another reason to think about it.
Spot on. Yeah. And try practice tests for both. They're available free at MBA.com. I am not paid to say that by GMAC, but go take the free test, one of each if you're not sure, and you have the chance to choose. And if you look at one and go, oh, this is so much nicer, and your scores are pretty close, great, go with the one that you like better, and don't over stress about it.
Yeah, and we'll get some early reads here soon as people start actually taking them and seeing how. Well, I know one last question, and maybe this is just a thought for a future day as well. But as we're coming down to both the GRE and the GMAT, we'll have new shortened versions. If someone is trying to decide between the two, I'm curious if you've got maybe 2 or 3 pieces of advice. And again, maybe this is a larger question than what I should be asking at the end.
No, I think there's a quick version. There's a longer version that I think would make another good video at some point. The quick version, if you're just starting out and you're not sure, GMAT, GRE, which one should I take? Go take both. Take a practice test for both. Practice tests available for free. ETS.org for your GRE, MBA.com for your GMAT. Take official ones. See which one felt better to you. And even saying this as a test prep guy, a lot of the decision of which test to take is really something that I think that conversation's better informed by admissions. Somebody understands your profile and admissions and where you want to go, because there's a lot of nuance there. You, in theory, there are tables out there where you can translate a GMAT score into a GRE score. In practice, honestly, those tools are deeply, deeply flawed for a lot of reasons. Some of them are very technical. They're very different exams. You can't just translate. I don't recommend using those tools. And the other reason why is that, different schools treat these tests a little bit differently. Yeah. There's different thresholds. What you're really after is, given the rest of your profile, is the kind of score that you're likely to get on one test, is that more likely to help your cause than the kind of score you're likely to get on the other test? That's really the key. So when we're trying to help a student decide which test to take, sometimes it's about their strengths and weaknesses. Often it's about their comfort, especially if anxiety is playing a role. And some students will say, oh, GRE, I can skip around within a section. I feel so much better. Or they'll say, I hate vocabulary. I feel so much better on the GMAT. Great. That matters for your performance. Like, the comfort can really matter. Yeah, strengths and weaknesses can matter. But the most important thing is, how likely is it that we get you to score on one test versus the other that gives you a really good shot at your target programs? So perfect world, go take your practice tests. And maybe instead of talking to a tutor, no offense to us, maybe you want to talk to an admissions person, go call Stratus, not an ad for Stratus, but go talk to somebody at Stratus and say, here's where I'm scoring. If these were the scores I got, what could I do with them?
Right. And thinking about a candidate holistically, as schools do, right? The test is an important piece, but it is a piece of an overall application. And depending upon education and what you studied and how you did in those classes, can really play into how important a specific test score is for someone. Yeah, absolutely.
And since we're doing a video on test changes, in case this is something that's bothering anybody watching this, the GRE just shortened in September 2023. Nothing has changed. The questions are the same as always. All they did was they went from a total of 40 quant questions to 27. Same thing on verbal. So basically removed a third of the questions. Went from 2 writing assessments to 1. Now it's a 2-hour exam, super, super short. Doesn't change how you study. Doesn't change how you interpret scores. being totally honest, the one thing that does change, you shorten a test, there's going to be a little bit more variability in your scores from day to day that might have nothing to do with what you're doing. Fewer questions, scores tend to wobble a little bit more. If you're scoring 10 points on the GRE lower than you expected based on your practice test, yeah, that's you. If it's a couple points here or there, yeah, a lot of that's just going to be natural wobble on the shorter test.
Test the questions that you're answering that day and
Yep.
how it works out.
Yep. So, and that's basic statistics, right? If we take a sample of, we take a public opinion poll, we sample 40 people, we're going to have a lower margin of error than if we survey 27 people. So now we've got 27 questions instead of 40. Okay, there's going to be a little bit more error, a little bit more instability in your scores. So if you see a little bit of a down performance on your test, a little bit, and you feel like you perform the same as always, yeah, just go retake it. And I realize that's really lame advice, but
that's not what people want to hear, but often kind of the right thing to do. And we talk about being at peace with your score, right? If you walk out and you're wondering, and that's going to be something that's nagging in the back of your head once you have submitted and get a result, then, taking it one more time can sometimes help people become at peace with their score.
That's it. And just understanding, I think new GRE in particular, it's like, yeah, scores are going to be a little bit different from day to day, and that's okay. And sometimes retaking is the thing that gets you to kind of what you deserve, especially on a test with that extra instability. It can work in your favor as well. Maybe you walk in and get lucky and go, this is better than my practice test. It happens. And statistically, it has become more likely to happen as they've shortened the test, that maybe you walk in and have a great day that's even better than you've been scoring on practice tests, and take the gift if you
celebrate. Exactly.
Celebrate it. Go enjoy.
Oh, great. Well, Charles, thank you so much for helping to answer some of these questions. I know that we've got lots of people that we've talked to that this will give them a peace of mind and help them make the right decision for themselves.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melissa.